Each child is looked at from a holistic perspective, not just their academic abilities or not just their athletic abilities. They're looked at as, as a holistic, active, growing being. And the school seems to focus on maybe what they consider their weakest point, and they help the child to grow in that area. So by the time they graduate from grade 8, they are holistically best prepared to meet the demands of the world that they're going to experience.
I'm Glenn Herbert, and I'm an editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private schools to gain insights into their programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administrators. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
So I had 2 children who went to the school, and they actually went a while ago. So I'm a former alumni parent, but current board member. So our kids were there from 1995 to 2010. And when I had my daughter, at first I took a year off on maternity leave with her, and then I placed her in a home daycare because I thought that it would be good for her to have a limited number of children to be with and get a more individualized approach to daycare. After a couple of months, the daycare operator called me and said she thought that Kelsey, my daughter, needed more stimulation than she was able to give her in the home care setting. And so she was the one who suggested that I start looking at Montessori because in her experience with working with other kids, she had seen the benefits of an individualized form of daycare, even at a year of age. So I looked at some of the local daycare centers, sort of the bigger centers that would be set up more like a Montessori school, but traditional daycare. And I wasn't happy with them. And then I literally drove past Bishop Hamilton, which is interesting because it's on a dead end street, but I took a wrong turn. So it worked out to be fortuitous for us. And I saw this school, and then I looked up some information, found out about Montessori education. I went in for a tour. And as soon as I walked through the door of the school, I realized that this was a place that was totally unique from anything I had ever experienced or realized was out there in our own community in Ottawa. The kids, first of all, were in uniforms, which I really appreciated because it gives a sense of inclusion when everybody's in a uniform and there's no competition for who's got what trainers or clothes on or whatever. And the kids, from the moment I walked in the door, even just to have that first initial experience, even the smallest children, the toddlers, were saying hello to me. They weren't afraid of me as a stranger. Everything was just organized. The kids were busy. They were active. There was no sort of screaming, running, yelling in the hallways. It was just a really energetic yet peaceful experience, and I was hooked literally from the first moment I opened the door. Then I met with the principal at the time, and so she gave me more information about the Montessori methods, about the finances, about the fact that the school was part of the Anglican School Society, so the Christian values that were involved. And then my husband came a few days later, and we went through the same process again. And as soon as he walked through the door of the school, he just sort of said, why didn't we know that this was out here? Like, we just felt very fortunate to find Bishop Hamilton. And that's how our journey began. So 15 years at the school, 2 children, and I have recommended it to many, many, many other families. And all these years later, I'm still actively involved in supporting and promoting it. Well, I have 2 very different children. Kelsey, my daughter, is a high academic achiever. Brendan, my son, had special needs, physical and learning disability. So they were 2 totally different types of students. So Kelsey is an introvert, and she liked the fact that you didn't have to be the loudest or the best or the top of the class. You were included no matter who you were. So she always felt from the time that she was aware of being an introvert that she was part of the team. She didn't have to try harder than anybody else to get noticed. She excelled in academics, so English, math, science, and French. And it wasn't something that we as her parents had noticed. This was feedback that we were getting from the teachers. And so she was supported academically all through from the time she was a toddler, all through to grade 8. And when she got into high school and then university, she was ahead academically of her peers. So she sort of realized that she had these giftings that weren't necessarily unique to her, but she had been supported by the teachers to bring out the best in her. The other surprising thing to Kelsey was that she'd always been a good athlete and participated on the different sports teams at Bishop Hamilton, because all the kids are given an opportunity to participate, whether they're the best or the worst. It's an inclusive process. And when, again, she got to high school, she ended up winning Female Athlete of the Year. When she got to the University of Western Ontario, she participated in intramural teams, and she always credits the teachers at Bishop Hamilton for instilling confidence in her. She knew that she wasn't the best at these sports, but she knew that she was a good team player, and that was of value to each team that she played on. Brendan had some, as I said, had some physical and some learning disabilities, and we didn't know what to do with him at first. We tried to go through the public system, and we're told that it was always dependent on budgets as to what services he would get, and we didn't like that. And then the hospital, the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, offers support for children who need it, but again, it's dependent on budgets. We actually got a call from the CASA teacher that Kelsey had to say that when we were ready, she had asked for Brendan, our son, to be included in her classroom. So that's how he got there. He is deaf, and yet he was the drummer for the school band and the school orchestra. And the music teacher had adapted a different way of teaching rhythm for him. And she saw that it worked with him. So then she adapted it for the other kids that she was dealing with. And so he became the school's drummer. Same with sports. He has one lung. And so his capacity for any sort of exuberance of energy is limited, but yet he participated in the pumpkin runs, like the 1 and 2 kilometer pumpkin runs. He was on the swim team. He played soccer. His self-confidence was always boosted the same way Kelsey's was, but in different areas. And now his job is as a foreman of a landscaping and snow removal company. It's a physical job with a kid who's deaf with one lung. Never would have dreamed that in a million years. He's the foreman of a team that he supervises, and he loves it. So for both of the kids, just being supported, and the teachers could see what their innate abilities and capabilities were, and they just supported them to the point where they gained confidence, and we kind of sat back and watched. My daughter Kelsey's wedding a couple of years ago, I said that, the old adage, it takes a community to raise a child. That's Bishop Hamilton. And so I do credit Bishop Hamilton community for helping to raise both our children. We weren't passive. I mean, the whole Montessori process is that it is a community. Parents are expected to participate not only in your own child's education, but also in the education of other kids in the community. So it was the community of teachers, whether it was not only our own kids' teachers, but the other teachers that they would see in the hallways. It's the staff in the office, it's the janitor, it's the cook, the chef. Everybody participates in the community. It's working with the other families, people that are the same as you, people that are different with you, but everybody who's on the same page. The inclusivity of raising your children in this community that embraces it's like you're completely embraced, not as individuals, but as you're part of the importance of you in this community. And it's important that everybody realizes that, so the community flourishes. And that was a huge lesson for all of us to learn. And we've practiced it almost in every community that we've been in since, because we saw how well it worked in Bishop Hamilton. Well, it's always a challenge when you're at a small private school and resources are limited. So whether it's computers or scientific equipment or the actual physical building, a bigger gym or whether they needed a track. So it's always limited by resources, but certainly it would have been great if there was access to more physical resources. Now, thankfully, there was a swimming pool right in the building right beside. So the kids were able to access that. And because they participated in lots of sporting events, we would go to different facilities or different schools that had these extra things. That's about the only thing that I can think of as far as the quality of teaching or the diversity of the staff that are there. I know it has changed since the time my kids were there. When my kids were actively students at the school, the teaching staff were fairly homogeneous in their cultural background. It's not so much like that anymore. And I appreciate the fact that it has become diversified to reflect the community of the children and the geographical community as well. So that's a positive change that's occurred since my kids were there. But apart from that, the foundation, the values, the beliefs, the academic standards, the resources that are available are all far above what we would have expected from a small private school. Yeah, I think the highest values that the school practice are appreciation of the individual and the individual's capabilities. So each child is looked at from a holistic perspective, not just their academic abilities or not just their athletic abilities. They're looked at as a holistic, active, growing being. And the school seems to focus on maybe what they consider their weakest point, and they help the child to grow in that area. So by the time they graduate from grade 8, they are holistically best prepared to meet the demands of the world that they're going to experience. So I really appreciated the fact that I had one child at one end of the spectrum and one child at the other, and yet they both flourished because they were treated as individuals and respected as individuals, and each staff member took time to get to know them as individuals and supported them from whatever way they could to prepare the kids to be confident, to be responsible, to know what their values and beliefs were as well, not just to sort of take on somebody else's values and beliefs, but to be able to give the kids opportunities to speak for themselves, because they need to be able to understand why they think a certain way or why they believe a certain thing. So they weren't just, memorizing something or saying it because they heard someone else say it. And the teachers all instilled in the kids the importance of being the best person that you can be, because then they take on a responsibility to make the world a better place. And it wasn't just a motto, it was a philosophy that was instilled in the kids so that they adapted and accepted the responsibility. I think the similarities are that the families are family oriented, that they come from, there's a wide spectrum of economic resources within the school. I know that like we would have considered ourselves a traditional middle-class family, and we were sort of in the middle of the spectrum. But the values are that the families are united in wanting the best for their children, not the best academic education and not sort of coming from the best reputation school, but the best for that individual child. And that's not a cookie cutter approach. That's not, even though they're all wearing uniforms and they, may look the same, it's getting to the core of who that child is and having the support around that child. And that comes from the family and the children themselves, their peers, and also their teachers. So I think the core value that I've seen all through the years, and even, still being involved with the school and having current parents on the board that I sit on, is the focus on each individual child. So it's not numerically together we have 185 or 200 kids. It's together we have in 185 or 200 individual children. and we put as much focus on child number 1 as we put us on child number 185. And I think that's what brings us together, because there's a huge diversity of cultural and financial backgrounds still at the school. But yet every child is known by their name. Every child, there's information about every child that's available. Not, that's coming out the wrong way, but it's not just this is John Smith and he comes from this sort of a family. It's this is John Smith and he's great at sports and he's great at French and he's got a dog and he loves. There just seems to be this. It's a normal part of the dialogue and function, which is quite unique for a school because we're so protective of information and confidentiality. Yet at Bishop Hamilton, because they still focus on each individual child, there's a freedom of the individual children to be themselves, knowing that they're growing up in a supportive environment. The first thing that I say to people is you have to go and see it to believe that it actually exists, because it's not like any other school I have ever seen. And I have seen lots of other private schools and public schools. It's just not like I call it a little gem or a little piece of heaven on earth. It's a place where kids can be themselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, and yet they're loved, supported, there's empathy, there's compassion, they're cared for. It's in the tone of the teachers, it's in the positive feedback. So, where you'll hear teachers or parents saying, no, Johnny, don't do this. That's not the way the Montessori world works. There's correction, there's adaptation, but it's all done in positive tones. So I think there's so much negativism in the world and kids are always being told not to do things and the boundaries are being narrowed for them. Whereas at Bishop Hamilton, the boundaries are expanded when the kids show that they can take responsibility for these expanded boundaries. So the first thing I would say is go and see it for yourself and see how this amazing community, which doesn't know how good it is, it's too humble to a fault sometimes, see how it works and how everyone is dependent on each other, but that's how the system works. The second thing is it's a process from, they do sort of 3-year rotations, but the whole thing from even infant and toddler up to grade 8, it's a linear process and it's always growing and developing. And you can see the development in the children when you go there from the juniors who are learning to do things maybe from a tactile or a sensory point of view to up in the higher grades where they're looking at things from a much more intellectual or conceptual framework, but it's a linear approach. And there's merit to the fact that you're building constantly on these skills and abilities and levels of understanding that have come from one side to the other. So that whole perspective of going from start to finish really is worth understanding and seeing how it works. And the third thing is asking parents and asking friends to prioritize what's really important to them. Is it important that they invest their money in a house or a car or a good vacation, or is it important that they invest their money in their children? Because the children are the ones that are going to be making decisions that are going to have an impact not only in the nuclear family, but also when they get out into the broader world. And I think it challenged us as parents going through, and has challenged other friends and families that we have recommended Bishop Hamilton to where are your priorities? Where do you want to put your money? Where is your investment? And learn from our own experiences. And if we can think back about our own education, which was probably much more limited in scope and perspective than these kids have today, would we have wanted to be in a place like Bishop Hamilton? And would that have been important for us to know that that was the priority of our own parents, as opposed to sort of storing the money away for a rainy day? Because when that time comes, there might be regrets as opposed to investing in the children who can make the world literally a better place. It's not just an adage to say it. It's a belief that we want to become reality. And so I think it's important for parents to challenge themselves as to what's important and where they want to place their investments of time and money. Well, I wish it had been our first choice. We were thankful that we didn't have to wait too long to come upon this. But I think that that the whole concept of daycare, childcare, we kind of throw these labels out and we don't really know what it means. But I think that it would have been great if I'd had an opportunity just to have a little more expose of the different types of daycare, childcare, especially Montessori, because it's a word that I think is misused in a lot of settings. So publicity, marketing, I'm thankful that I went down that dead end street, but I wish that others didn't have to take that same sort of a route, that they were more aware of it and could make the choice sooner for the children, and that Montessori education, and especially the accredited Montessori schools like Bishop Hamilton, were raised higher in profile in the opportunity to choose what type of education our children have, and not feel like there isn't anything, and that parents really do have the opportunity to choose education that caters to their particular child. It doesn't put them in a cookie cutter approach, or, well, this is the way we do things, take it or leave it. I think that, well, we were lucky that it worked out so well for us, but I think it would be easier for other parents to know what's available and to make informed decisions more easily.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.